the seeking out treasure for me is just what you do is something so interesting, guy. This might be like an amateur question, but this is a personal question. What is the craziest thing that you found? What is the most interesting thing that you found? Not oldest,
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I mean, it's it's a little bit dark, but I think when we were excavating this burial mound in southern Siberia, there's all these kind of like, regulations and kind of protocol that you have to go through before you kind of dig into the main part of the burial mound. Because like going into the middle is where the central burial chamber, that's usually where the chieftain would be with a bunch of sacrificed horses. And, there was a tomb just down the valley that had over 50 pounds of gold, this massive torque, which is like this like gold necklace that they thought the chieftain probably wore it from when he was a teenager because it wouldn't have fit over his head.
Oh, interesting.
And so it was all worn on the inside, and it was just like one of the most incredible. And I got to interview that archaeologist, Konstantin Chuganov, who found that gold.
What? Not to cut you off. This is like a side.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when discovery like that happens?
So they found this was Arjan II, which was it was the richest Scythians were these horseback warrior nomads and that were very prevalent in the steppes and during the Iron Age, and they're kind of like the template for the Dothraki in Game of Thrones, if like a pop culture shorthand. Yeah. They use a lot of like same belt buckles with like. But they had these like very, very iconic, you can tell their burials have like iconic animal style art, like twisted animals.
Okay.
And so that burial mound was actually heavily looted. So the center had already been like poked into big old hole in the middle where grave robbers had tried to loot it. But for whatever reason, this grave was different than 95% of the other tombs. And the main burial chamber was off center. So maybe they thought they'd put like almost like a decoy.
Whoa.
So when the archaeologists were clearing it, they go down, they see this like unlooted chamber going down. And then it was like, maybe 30 feet down.
Oh, that's a...
Yeah,
wait, deep. But you're saying the mound top is 30 feet.
Yeah, and it was deep. So they had ladders going down. And then the actual burial chamber almost looks like a log cabin. So they'd use larch wood. And in some cases, in Scythian burial mounds, the larch would help preserve the bodies. And this is rare. This is like higher altitude burial mounds. You even have like ice mummies with preserved tattoos. That was our goal. That's what we really wanted to find. We didn't have quite such good preservation as that. But in this case, they went in and they found not only did the chief have this torque, but he also had these gold beaded pants. So these like tiny, he had some like gold beads, all like his entire pants were made out of them. This obviously wasn't something he'd be wearing every day because it'd be super heavy.
Yeah.
But I got to hold some of these tiny beads and they're incredible to behold. And another instance where people thought, oh, these, rough barbarians, like how could they have their own gold work? They must have stolen it from somebody else. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely from their own artisans.
And they're nomadic.
Yeah, and they're nomadic. They thought, why? Like, how could you have, the time if you're moving around and horseback and all this stuff? But really, when you compare it to an agricultural lifestyle where you're tilling fields for 8 hours a day, actually, if you have your horses, they would have like bands of like 1,000 horses. You have all of your food, your clothing, everything right there. You can actually have a lot of time to make art, do other things. Besides, if you're not building cities, you're not.
I guess that is crazy.
But in our site, what we found that was just like kind of fascinating for me and a little bit disturbing though is that we started finding a lot of violence. Like we started pulling out these like vertebrae that had like an arrowhead straight through it.
What?
Like, so I was just photographing like a skull that had like a puncture right in the head, shot with an arrow. Like we had some of these like a lot of decapitations, and actually we looked at some of the statistics, and it was one of the most violent archaeological sites ever found. So like 27% of because we pulled out over 100 skeletons, and I was documenting, photographing, cleaning these burials, and one of them we found was actually like an adult like holding a child, like, and they were buried together, and they were just riddled with arrowheads all through them, smashed skull, but like kind of in this like very touching embrace, like they had been buried together. And that's when like you're kind of like both like a mixture of like excited but also disturbed. And then it's just so often it's like something that's that old, like 2,000 years old. The main structure of the tomb is actually even older, but these burials are 2,000 years old. Like you just feel like transported back in time.
Oh,
and you feel that moment, like, and you're just kind of like, you get this like, you know, how fragile human life is, but then these just little vestiges that we leave, and like how you can tap into that. And of course it's, you know, before we did the dig, we were blessed by these Siberian shamans, which was like a whole trip in itself. And it was this whole ceremony that lasted hours where, I mean, and we did multiple of them throughout kind of like ask the ancestors permission to dig. And one of the shamans, and they have these crazy costumes where they have like basically like strings and things hanging over their face. And one of them had like a whole taxidermy bird helmet thing, and like these big bear claws and like big robe. And he was going around, he just whipped all of us with like a horse whip. We had no idea what was going on. Like, I speak a little Russian, but he was speaking.
What do you mean? What do you mean he whipped you?
He whipped every single person. Nobody got spared. Even the old babushkas and the
no
there. Yeah,
but
they all got whipped. It was part of the ceremony. It was part of the like